The 10th season of Consider This is brought to you in part by From the Top, a national program showcasing the musical talents of young people. From the Top can be heard on KVNO Classical 90.7 each Saturday at 6 p.m.
Consider This, a program of issues and information behind today's news. Once again, from the campus of the University of Nebraska at Omaha, here is your host, Andrea McMaster.
Hello, everyone, and thank you again for joining us for this edition of Consider This. I'm Andrea McMaster. We're glad that you could be with us today. Well, during the holiday season, we hear about more and more families digging themselves farther into debt, all the shopping, all the gift buying. Well, this week on Consider This, we're going to tell you about a program that's helping families become debt-free and achieve some of their dreams, like owning a home or go to college. And today we have a guest from the United Way of the Midlands, Julie Kalkowski, that's with us today. And we're so glad that you could be here today to talk to us about this program in particular, which is called the Individual Development Account Program. Right. IDA, as we'll probably refer to it a lot in this segment today and Consider This. But I first wanted to have you talk about why do we have this problem in our nation that so many people are in debt? And let's give a couple statistics first off, just right off the bat. The average credit card debt in Nebraska, $7,800. Yikes.
Big chunk of change.
Right. And more than 48,000 families sought help from the United Way last year for basic necessities like paying for utilities, housing, and food. Right. So it gives people an idea. This is a huge problem. Yep. Why is this such a big problem?
Well, I think now more than ever, more people are in debt. If you look at our national savings rate, it's like a negative 0.05%. So that's the lowest savings rate since the Great Depression. And I just think families are just stretched really, really tight. And so what we're trying to do, Andrea, is to help people how to develop budgets, teach them how to save. And we found that when people are given the opportunity to save, they do. And so, but it's not rocket scientists, but it's kind of finding the right combination of teaching people how to develop a budget, encouraging and supporting them, looking at their individual budgets, going over those, getting the help they need to move out of debt and to move towards financial freedom.
And maybe one of those tools is owning fewer credit cards or no credit cards at all.
Right, because the fewer credit cards you have, the less tempted you are to say, oh, I've got $100 left here, I've got $500 left on this one. You don't want to do that because then you have to juggle and try to remember. So I'm getting older, so I try to less is more. So if I only have one credit card to remember, then I'm better off. And that way you can really manage your money.
Well, let's talk about this time of year. You know, there's the hype. You want to buy everything in the store. You see all the advertisements. You get all the catalogs in the mail. You're going shopping with your kids, and they see the toys, and they want that, and they want that. Right. I want to talk a little bit about instilling those good financial habits early on, from the very beginning, and what families can do to make sure that they have good financial habits.
Well, the best Christmas present you can give your family is not to get deeper in debt. I mean, that would be a wonderful Christmas present to give. The other thing is you want to have a financial budget. And you need to have a financial budget that not just the husband or wife comes home and says, honey, this is what we're going to do. You need to have buy-in from both people that are the breadwinners in the family. So if you have a family budget, if you're working towards a goal, when your son or daughter says, Mom, I want this, or Dad, I have to have this, or everybody at school has this, you can say, you know what, that's not in the budget right now. Right now, we can't buy that, but you know, you get allowance or you're working odd jobs, you can save towards this. So it's much easier to say no when you have a plan. It's harder to say no if you don't have a plan and you're just hoping like you have enough money to cover the monthly expenses. Like, well, we can do that. And people get $5 and $10 to death. You know, $5 here, $10, buy this gift for our kid at school. I mean, so if you have a plan, it's easier for you to say no. And you know, there's a lot of places on the websites you can go on budgeting. You just Google budget and they'll give you lots of different plans. But you know, we can talk a little bit more about budgeting later on. But just having a plan is one of your best defense against getting deeper in debt.
And I like your idea too, really getting everybody in the family on board.
Yep.
With that plan. Start at an early age. Okay, well, let's talk about the Individual Development Account Program, the IDAs. It's a fairly new program that I know that you helped bring to the Omaha area.
Yep.
So why was this program established?
Well, what I saw with IDAs is it gave people hope. that if people would save, if they try to manage their money, that they could get ahead. Because a lot of times what families are finding nowadays, Andrea, is that they get a little bit further in debt and a little bit farther behind every month because they're not making enough to cover their monthly expenses. So what this program does is a number of different things. One, it teaches people to save. It helps people develop a budget so that they can figure out how to save. And the third, it works towards building assets. And I just want to talk a little bit about assets for a minute. We know that kids that grow up in homes owned by their parents are much less likely to drop out of school, much less likely to become teen parents, and much less likely to get involved in the court system. And the other thing that surprised me about kids of renters versus kids of homeowners is that when you look at their English and math scores at age 16, kids of homeowners score significantly higher than kids of renters. And that never made any sense to me till I talked to a number of principals in OPS. And they said, Julie, if a kid moves continually during a school year, if they move 2 to 4 times during the school year, they're not going to be very successful in school. And that's a big problem for a lot of kids in OPS. They're moving quite a few times during the school system, so they're not going to get what they need to be successful.
That really makes sense. We'll talk a little bit how the program works. One thing that I really like about the program is you're teaching people to save their hard-earned dollars.
Yes.
It's not just that one handout that they might need at a time, but it's not going to the food bank to get food to put on their dinner table that night, but it's taking that money and actually, so they have some pride in what they're building on.
Right, and the whole concept, the IDAs are technically defined as dedicated match savings accounts. So in Omaha, how we have set up this program is people save $50 a month. It's matched with $100, and then they save this for 24 months. So at the end of 24 months, they will have saved $1,200. It will be matched with $2,400. So they'll have $3,600 plus interest to invest in an asset. And the asset can be home ownership, it can be education or job training, or it can be small business development. And 50% of the match that we have in Omaha usually comes from the federal government. There's a program called the Assets for Financial Independence Act, and so we get matching money. If we raise 50% of the match here in Omaha, we can get the federal government to match it with 50%. So you're leveraging dollars there, and so that's a good use of resources.
So that other 50% of the matching is then coming from the United Way of the Midlands?
No, it comes from a variety of sources. Like Marriott has an IDA program. So Marriott is matching 50% of they're giving a dollar for dollar match, and then the federal government's giving a dollar match. So it's a 2-to-1 match, with half of the match coming from the employer, Marriott in this case, and half of the match coming from the federal government.
Okay.
And during this time, people go through financial literacy. So they develop a budget, they learn how to save money. They also work on their credit report, because that's another huge issue for families. People that have bad credit, not only are they not able to get loans at a reasonable interest rates, they end up oftentimes being denied jobs. More and more employers in the Omaha area are pulling people's credit reports before they hire them. And if you have bad credit, you can't get hired at a number of different businesses around the community. So having a healthy credit report, a good credit report, is very important to families and to workers.
Okay. Well, that's one huge benefit of the IDA. I want to go through just a couple of them. We've talked about promoting the economic, just in the independence, the building the financial knowledge and skills, which many times these individuals might lack, helping participants succeed as they leave the welfare system.
Right.
And increasing home ownership, strengthening communities, and really what I like about it is this is a hand up, not a hand out.
Right. Because there's a lot of programs that match our savings, like our retirement programs. Those are matched dollars. So this was developed by Michael Sheridan, who's a professor at Washington University in St. Louis, and he said, hey, they're matching our retirement. Why can't we do a matching program for low-income workers? And so this program, in order to be eligible for the federal matching funds, you have to make 200% or less of the federal poverty level. And so that's about $35,000 for a family of 4. And so that way, we make sure that people who need the hand up are getting it, but it's not eligible for everybody in the community. So I just want to make that clear. And we have to raise the matching dollars before we can open slots for it. So right now there's a number of different IDA programs. Marriott has their own. There's a program with nonprofit employees where a nonprofit employer plus United Way and the federal governments are matching their savings. And then there's a community-based program where we're able to raise some money earlier. And the thing that I love about this program is when I first started it back in 2000, we had 10 single mothers in the program. Their average income was $13,372 a year. And these women save $50 a month. So can you imagine saving $600 out of your $13,000 a year? I mean, it was huge. But the other thing is, so many of the women said, you know, I've only saved $257, but I don't feel like the wolves are at my door. I feel like I have this breathing room that I've never felt before. And a couple other women said, you know, my friend said, girlfriend, we want to eat what you're eating because you're doing something different. You're going someplace we're not going, and we want to get, we don't even know where the platform is. You're in this train and you're moving forward, and we don't even know where the platform is. So it really changes people to think long term. And I just want to give you a real quick story about that. Karen, who was our first parent, one of our first family members in it, she came from an abusive alcoholic family. And when we do this training, and it's like 10 weeks of very intensive training, and so we didn't have child care for them, and all of them were single moms and needed child care, so we said, just bring the kids with them. Well, her daughter was so out of control that I said, you know, you can't bring your daughter back anymore. And so that was kind of hard. Her daughter was 4. But I said at Christmas time, I said, have her come back at Christmas. And so her daughter, 9 months later, came back at Christmas. And I did one of the first, I'm a social worker, and I did one of the worst things I've ever done as a social worker. I said, Karen, your daughter's doing so well now. Is she on Ritalin? And she just looked at me and said, Julie, she is not on drugs. I'm just a much better parent. She said, I sat down with her and I said, honey, Mom and you are going to buy a house. And if we keep buying these things at the grocery store, we're never going to be able to buy a house. So again, that when you have a plan, it's easier to say no. And her daughter's doing great. And Karen's a nurse now. I mean, it's just a wonderful thing to see people making progress and getting access to the American dream. And I think the other thing that I love about IDAs, Andrea, is they give people hope. That if you work hard, you can get out of poverty. You can have a home for your children to grow up to. And I think most of us in America, we do want that for our children. So it's a great program.
And I like with the program, you have so much ownership in it. And,
yes.
And employers getting involved. You keep on mentioning Marriott. I want for people to really understand that this is not something that you have to be involved with United Way of the Midlands to get involved. Employers can be helping some of our families in our community who are low income build some of these dreams for themselves. So how can employers get on board?
Well, I want to clarify that just a second. It's a nice community thing for employers to do, but that's not why employers are doing it. Employers are getting involved in this program because it affects their bottom line. Because if you have to hire workers all the time, it costs you a lot to recruit people, to put those ads in the paper, on the radio, wherever it is. It costs you money to hire these people, and it costs you money to train these people. So if you can keep a worker for 2 years versus having to maybe fill that rotation, to fill that job 2 or 6 times during those 2 years, you are money, even though you're paying them a matching $1, if you're paying them $1,200 extra over a 2-year period, you're actually saving money in the long run. And we also know that a worker who works 6 weeks versus 6 months, where this 2 year, you're going to be a lot more productive. And then also you're going to be a lot less financially stressed worker. And the Federal Reserve Bank has done a big study saying that 15 to 20% of American workers are severely enough stressed, financially stressed, that they lose an average of 20 hours of productivity a month. So when we talk to employers about the financial stresses, they'll say, oh, we know that. We have employees that their wages are being garnished, they're coming and asking for advances. You know, we've got to
digging into their retirement.
Right,
money.
Are they not being part of our retirement plan because they don't feel they can afford it. So this is a way to help employers kind of meet a lot of those needs and solve a lot of those problems. So you're doing 2 things at the same time, and you're also helping that family become stronger, that community become stronger. The more home ownership, more people that owns their homes in a neighborhood, is the stronger that neighborhood is and the more stable it is. There was Rudy Novacek, who was probably the father of the neighborhood movement here in Omaha, and he'd always say, honey, I don't know what it is about home ownership, but it acts like a vaccination against trouble. And we're not saying that everybody who owns a home, their life is perfect, but it just makes things a lot easier for that family and for that community.
And a financially stable person is a
Right.
better worker. That's
Oh, much
you're
better.
seeing that relationship.
Oh, if you're not getting people calling asking, would you like to make a payment? Or if somebody's car breaks down on Sorensen and they can't get to their job, or they get to their job, they get there late, and they're not thinking about the client or the customer in front of they're thinking about their car getting towed, or they're thinking about that. So you want people when they're at work to be able to focus on their job and not worry about the people calling them that they owe money to, and not worrying about, are their utilities going to be shut off or any of those things. So these are just much more stable and more productive workers.
Okay, so Marriott's one of the employers that signed on
Right.
board with this. Other employers, are you looking for more to sign on?
We're working with employers in a number of different areas. We're working also with a financial education component where we teach financial education, and when people go through this training, there's a huge problem with a lot of people who are unbanked in this country. And when you're unbanked, that means you can't direct deposit your payroll check. And so what people do is they have to pay to cash their paycheck. So what we're seeing is, and I know there's a place in South Omaha, you pay $2 for every $100 you need to cash. And so there's a woman who told me she made $419 every week. And so she pays $10 every month, Andrea, every week just to cash her paycheck. So that's $40 a month that she doesn't have to spend on her family's financial needs. If she could direct deposit her account. And many people don't have banking accounts because they're in check systems, which means they have bounce checks. So I'm working with 9 banks and a credit union in Omaha, and these banks have told me that if people go through this financial education, whether it's through the IDA program or through our financial education program, then they will open them what we call a second chance account, and then they can enroll, they can get a bank account, they can start direct depositing their program. And there's a lot of research, and they've done a lot on single parents, but they've found that single mothers who have a bank account are much less likely to become homeless, and we know that's a good thing. So we're trying to get people banked. That's why we're working with the banks. The mayor's office is working with us. The IRS is working with us. We have a lot of partners who are trying to help us. Employers, we talked about employers, quality living. We did a pilot with them in May to look about what kind of impact would financial education have on their workforce. And they had 17 people that started in May. 3 weeks, Bob Cook is on the phone. He said, Julie, we like this program so well, we're going to let all 400 of our employees go through this program. So they are sold on that. Nebraska Furniture Mart is going to start a pilot with us in January, February, and we have one other employer we're working out. There's 6 that want to do it with us, and we're just trying to identify which of those 6 will move forward.
Which, Julie, I think is so key. I think these financial education seminars that you're
Right.
having is so good, because really knowledge is key for savings for a lot of these people. There were some examples that I wanted to go through. I know
Sure.
that you mentioned some of the banks, but that some people might fear banks, and so that's why they maybe don't get involved in even having a bank account.
Right.
But the danger, these families are left with the buy here, the pay here,
Right.
the rent-to-own retailers, where they pay for higher interest rates for their appliance, their car loans.
They usually pay 3 to 4, like if they're buying a refrigerator, it's 3 to 4 to the times. If it's a rent to own, they pay $19.99 a week, and so they end up paying $1,400 or $1,600 for a $400 refrigerator. So, I mean, this is money these people don't have. If you go to a buy here, pay here, oftentimes the interest rate for a car loan is 26%. Well, you're never going to get, and usually those cars don't last very long. So
again, teaching that traditional bank accounts is key
Right.
in savings. Something else, the Earned Income Tax Credit.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about that.
Sure. The Earned Income Tax Credit is the most effective anti-poverty program we have in this country. It lifts more people out of poverty than any other program we have. It lifts over 200 families out of poverty every year. And what it is, it says if you work and your family earns below a certain income, and that's about $39,000 for a family of 4, you'll get an income tax refund on your annual taxes. So, for like a single mother of 2 children who makes about 20 grand, she'll get about $4,000 back. This tax credit is based on the number of hours you work and the number of people in your family, and then you get a tax refund based on those numbers. And so there's a formula the feds have, and they use that. But last year in Omaha, working families got $51 million in the EITC refund. So that $51 million that came back to our community in the form of the Earned Income Tax Credit. And that's a wonderful thing, Andrea, except so many of the people, about 3/4 of the people who get this Earned Income Tax Credit, or EITC, they go to paid preparers. And there's nothing wrong with a paid tax preparer, but a lot of these folks, about 2/3 again of the families that get this credit nationwide, do not have a bank account. And they usually need this money. It's January, they let some bills go to spend money on Christmas. So when they need this money, they need this money. They know they're going to get, you know, $2,000 or $3,000 back, and they want it right away. And so what happens, they go to these paid preparers and they say, I can't wait for my check because I don't have a bank account, and I can't wait 6 weeks for a paper check. And so they say, we can give this to you today or in the next couple days. But the average cost to that is about 40% of their refund. And so they lose about 40% of their refund. And this is money that could have been used to pay down debt, to put money in savings, to buy that refrigerator or that TV instead of paying 3 to 4 times the cost. So we have a lot of free tax prep sites. If people would call 211, and if they make less than $39,000, they can tell them what their address is, and they can say, this is the tax prep site, that's the free tax prep site that's closest to you. And so we want people to take advantage of that, and we want them also at these free tax prep sites. There's a number of special ones where we can open a bank deposit. The banks have agreed to open accounts for these people, so then they can direct deposit their bank account, and we want them to start that banking relationship.
So once again, we continue to stress that the help is out there,
right,
and people just need to get the knowledge and the education.
So call 211. You can find out where that is, and they will connect you with that.
Okay, because I wanted to mention that as many as 1/4 of the Nebraskans who are eligible for that earned income tax credit, to check that box on their for their taxes, tax returns do not file for it.
Right.
So there's 1/4 of those people that are missing out on some money that could be coming to them.
And the number one reason they don't do this, Andrea, is they say, I don't make enough money to pay taxes, so I'm not going to file. But what they don't realize is by not doing that, they're missing out maybe on child care tax credits, on educational tax credits, and on this earned income tax credit. So they could have gotten a refund, up to $5,000, and they're missing out on it. So, and for those families that are making $20,000, that's a lot of money for them at one time. So it's just a great program, and we encourage people to take advantage of it.
Well, I just really continue to think that education is so key, and I want you to talk a little bit that these IDAs is just one part of the Family Economic Success Initiative.
Right.
It's a big picture.
Right.
So talk to us about that program. I know that there's other people that are involved and other groups that are involved, not just United Way of the Midlands as well.
Right. The Family Economic Success Initiative is a collaborative program that's run between UNO, the CPAC's office, the College of Public Affairs and Community Service, and United Way of the Midlands. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to help working families develop economic security. So we know that families that are economically secure are going to they're going to do better. And so that's our goal. We want people to succeed. We want their children to succeed, families to succeed. So that's what we're focusing on. And there's 3 components that we're working on. One is, we've already talked about the IDAs, the dedicated match savings account, where people save money and it gets matched and they end up investing in an asset. They go through financial education. And our partner in the IDA program is the Family Housing Advisory Services. And Julia Craig is in charge of she's the IDA coordinator for the city of Omaha, and she does a great job with that. And then the second component in the Family Economic Success Initiative is the financial education component, and it's also one-on-one consulting. So people go through, the husband and wife, or the 2 adults that live in the house, have to come in and look at what are all their bills, what are all their expenses, what's their revenue, and kind of work out a budget, and then they work out a plan. So they're working towards something like home ownership, or to buy that car, or to whatever it is that they need to do as a family. And then the third component is the EITC. And that's the mayor last year was our spokesperson for our EITC campaign. He'll be our spokesperson again this year, so we're really happy for Mayor Fay's involvement in that. And then we're also working with 9 banks and with the credit union to help us look at what kind of financial products and services do these families need to be successful, to get them connected with mainstream banking. And that's because again, we know that families that have banking accounts are more financially stable than ones that don't.
Okay. For everybody out there listening, whether or not you fall in the low-income level of the families that we've talked about really targeting, what ideas or what are some of the keys in building a good budget plan?
Well, with our financial IDAs, our partner is, we don't do the one on the Family Economic Success Initiative. We don't do the one-on-one counseling or stuff. We have partners. So with the IDA program, our partner is the Family Housing Advisory Services, and with the financial education component, that is, our two partners are the Family Housing Advisory Services again, and Waddell and Reed, Sean Mackett and Mike Joyce from Waddell and Reed are our providers there. So you said, what are some tips to get people going with the budgeting?
A good budget plan. Some good things for us to keep in mind, especially where we're going to begin the new year here.
Yes. Well, you want to start off right. What you want to do, number one, is you want to figure out what your revenue is. So what are your paychecks? What's coming in every month? So then you've got a starting number. If it is, it's $2,100. Is it three? What are you working with? And then you have to start. The number one thing is to list your fixed expenses. You know that your rent or your mortgage is always going to stay the same. So put that in. Your utilities, what a lot of people who help people with budgeting say, get on the level payment plan. So make sure your MUD and your OPP bills are the same. So every month, you know, you don't have those huge things. Sometimes, you know, it's really cheap.
Right.
And then you get hit with a $300 one. And so to have that level payment
is good for utilities.
Yep. So that's their budget. And then you need to figure out, you know, what are your other fixed expenses. So identify all your fixed expenses. Do you have a car payment? That's always going to be the same. So after you identify what are your fixed expenses, then look at what are your periodic expenses. We all have insurance that comes due every 6 months. You have to license the car. You have to do, what are those other periodic expenses that come? List those out and then say, okay, it looks like, you know, and how much is my food and what am I doing? And both Waddell and Reed and Family Housing Advisory Services have good ideas about how to reduce your food budget. You know, if you're going out to eat every night or 3 times a week, what are some things you can do that are still fun but get your kids involved? I mean, all across the program with the IDAs across the country, there's over 500 IDA programs across the country, and they have really creative solutions. They have their kids, you know, are responsible for doing food night, and the kids love it, and it teaches the kids to cook. I mean, it does a lot of really good things. So I think getting your kids involved too and letting them know this is what mom and dad are paying on this, and this is why we can't do this. This is why we keep the thermostat at 62, because if we keep it at 68, this is what how much money, and so we won't have money to go out to movies or whatever it is. You need to build in some fun money too. We go to the cheap theater, $1.50 at 32nd and L. For $1.50 you can go to the movie, and that's really an affordable thing for most families. So don't forget to build in some fun things, because if it's like a diet, if you're on a really restrictive diet, you can't have chocolate, you can't have, you know, how long are you going to stay on it? But if your budget, your family budget, is something that your family has sat down and worked through and identified, you know, what it is, these are our expenses, and so this is what we have left over, this is what we can do with it.
Yeah, I think that's very key.
Yep.
Remember to have some fun too while you're at it. Okay, well, a couple of numbers. The 211 number is really the number that you can call to find out more about the IDA program, to find out more about preparing for your taxes.
Right.
Before April, the free tax seminars and where they're located. Call that number 211, and also the website www.uwmidlands.org. So
Actually,
United Way of the Midlands.
Right, or for the FESI program, if employers want to call us to find out more about these programs, they can call me at 561-7592, again 561-7592, or they can look at our website, which is www.fessiomaha.org, FESI. So,
okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us this week.
Yep. Thank you, Andrea.
More information and program archives can be found at unotv.unomaha.edu. If you'd like to share your comments about this show, call UNO-TV at 402-554-2516 during regular business hours.
The 10th season of Consider This is brought to you in part by From the Top, a national program showcasing the musical talents of young people. From the Top can be heard on KVNO Classical 90.7 each Saturday at 6 p.m.